It's official. We did it. We have officially folded. I think that's the right language we've been using. Is it folded Jam Design and Communications into the StrategiQ family? So, welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Very excited for the viewers. The reason we're sitting here having this conversation is to tell the story about why, to set the tone, and hopefully some excitement for the future for those watching.
Cool. Well, I'm going to start with it was your 10th anniversary.
Yes, the New Future Value Conference.
Yeah, which I was invited to, where you had a gathering of all of your team and clients, and just shared exactly where you were as an agency and your vision for the future. And it was done in a way that I'd never experienced before an agency do. Show up and be so transparent and humble and vulnerable and ambitious. And it was lovely that both your clients and your staff, as it were, the team, were all there. And that was when the conversations began. So I just wanted to sort of honor that moment. And yeah, so this is actually Jam's 30th year.
Wow.
You know, we were founded 30 years ago, is from this year. And I guess, you know, the history of Jam, you can loosely break it into 3 chapters. You know, the first 10 years, we were exploring how our imaginations could work with design and brands, and we were doing all sorts of radical, inventive brand expression through design, which began by working with the discarded components of manufacturing brands and being invited to the Audi factory and asked to create sculptures and pieces of furniture using these components. And loosely, the next 10 years, that led into a far more sort of, I want to say, brand building, marketing focus. So then we'd actually start developing, you know, global campaign ideas of how brands could show up in the world, which were integrated from physical experiences, you know, to in-store experiences, you know, across all touch points. And then latterly, our work was more focused on working with leadership teams and supporting the leaders of brands and business find their purpose so that the entire organization could be mobilized behind a vision of the world they wanted to create. And for me, having Jam fold into StrategiQ at this time is very significant. Obviously, you know, it feels like a massive new chapter, in part because I've always led Jam by myself and never had been accountable to anyone else. So that's exciting at the ripe old age of 53 to sort of merge in a way that I'm now part of a much bigger team. That feels kind of exciting and important, but also because we are swimming in the seas of technology and social media, and Jam has always been about the physical, real world experience. Largely, we're like, how do you create experiences, emotive experiences? And what I have noticed over the years is that unless we become fluent in how our imaginative ideas can show up and be integrated with all that is technology within a brand, we're missing a massive trick. And I'm too old to go and learn that stuff. You guys are genius at that. Boom.
Perfect. And how's it felt integrating with that team now? Because you've had lots of time with the team now and getting up to speed with this, the tactical element of marketing. And how's that felt on
Yeah,
being
so
part?
since May, I've been coming in frequently and trying to understand what happens here. I still need my hand holding around a
We've
lot
set
of...
Google Gmail up now, haven't we?
I've got an email account,
Yeah,
and I've learned how to use WhatsApp. And and that is a learning curve, and that does inform the way ideas will be fostered in the future as we collaborate. And the team's been super open-hearted and welcoming. And the fact that you moved to London has obviously made that an easier experience for me, because the Jam studio was less than 800 meters down the road that way, for 15 years. So in some way, it feels a bit like coming home. And it's also been very exciting to bring the outlook that we've for the way in which I feel particularly brands play a really important role in the future of civilization, the direction that business needs to go in if we're going to create a world that's better for everybody. And it's been wonderful to engage with that conversation with the team here, who also feel very excited. Whether it's how do we support the well-being of the planet and people and just transition and all these things that weave into what it means to be doing business in the 21st century. It's like we're living in a very complicated integrated system, global system, and so everything we do must make meaning in the right way.
Yeah, and when we've had these previous conversations, as you were talking, you spoke about how Jam was a crazy place to hang out in the early days, and I guess culturally. And we've looked at how we need to think about the space that our team turn up in, and how do you create areas for creativity? How do you inspire creativity? How can you bring some of that craziness, that wackiness that Jam had, its authenticity to think outside the box, or live outside the box, not just think outside the box, into StrategiQ?
That's a great question, but why don't you start by sharing the culture here at StrategiQ that you fostered over these 10 years, because that'll, I think, segue into my experience and how I want to work with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Great throwback, because the culture for me has always been about people, and how do we develop people, how do we turn up for our clients, how do we make sure that what we do works. And I think when a client trusts us with their business, their brand, and you sit in a meeting and you look a client in the eye and you say, we want to help you take your business from here to here. Or the client looks you in the eye and says, can you help us take our business from here to here? And that is, whether you do the formal contract, as soon as that interaction happens, there's a contract. And the same with when people join. People join at the start of their career or midway through their career. There's a commitment there to performance. And that's the word I was building up to. It's we're here to perform. We're here to perform for each other. We're here to perform for our clients. And we can't take that responsibility lightly. And as an owner, founder, that's been, I think, the underlying culture of the agency, and at some point obsession. So I think that's where we've landed, and I think that's authentically us. How do we turn up for each other, and how do we turn up for our clients? But I would say, how do you then push? This is where this ambition comes from, and you mentioned it at the conference. I make no apologies for being as ambitious as I am. Therefore, we are, and I'm constantly looking for where can we go. What does the market need? What do we need? How do we need to turn up? So I think that's the culture I've tried to foster. And we've got a lot right, and we've got a lot wrong in the 12 years of doing that. But yeah, how do you then see you folding into that and that creativity piece as well?
So
does that resonate, by the way? Does that feel, from an external point of view, does that feel like?
So the foundation of the team and the spirit here is that everyone's very present and supportive of each other, and open to evolve and embrace the ambition. And that's a really important part of the creative process, is basically unlocking the imagination, the collective imagination of the team here. It's inviting people to think beyond the pragmatic and the deliverable that's being asked for, in order to begin to foresee a future that hasn't yet been delivered. And it's that space that I want to create space for people to step into. And that requires courage. It requires permission to get things wrong. it's important, therefore, to foster, that there is not a culture here of blame, arrogance, and ego, which are all dampeners to creativity.
Yeah.
There's a culture of let's express ourselves and see where it goes.
Yeah,
And
nice.
so, that's, for a long time, we've worked in very collaborative ways with our clients, because you can imagine how, everybody has a creative DNA within them, growing, just learning how to walk is a creative act, learning how to speak is a creative act. We all have that creative capacity, and therefore inviting clients into the creative process is often a wonderful way of pushing oneself, and also developing concepts that are going to land well back in the system. So, I think we will be working with our clients as well to invite them, as much as they want to, play with us in that creative space, to imagine what their organization, their business, their brand could do, how it could show up in the world in ways it's not doing at the moment.
Yeah, so there's two parts there. One, I think you were very modest about the 30 years and the achievements, that certainly excited me. When we met, I was blown away by the quality of thinking and the quality of work that you'd done with clients over the years.
I don't think it's modesty. I just can't remember half of what we've done.
Well, let's try and go back a little bit to that intro where you said, Jam, we talked about Jam's background and heritage. What are the two favorite pieces of brand transformation work? Because that's what I saw you as. I saw you as a, and I don't know if we're allowed to say brands, that you've worked on. I mean,
Sure.
there's some recent one that I'm really excited about in terms of leadership, how you've changed how leadership are turning up, and therefore how brand runs through that business now. Yeah. I think it would be great for people to understand, that are watching this, what Strategic and therefore Jam, can now offer if they know us as a performance agency. We now have you plus the creative team, by the way, because obviously we have invested heavily in the creative team over the last 5 years. Yeah. This just feels like you're just going to spark it in lots of ways. So, two pieces of work, where you can put your shirt, your chest out a little bit and go, yeah, we did that, and that was great.
So one that comes to mind immediately, because the effect of our work can be felt and touched and experienced throughout the entire organization, is Brompton Bicycles.
Yeah.
And that's because we were invited in just before COVID, actually, when they'd spent a long time down a path which had brought them to a very successful place. And it was a time where they really now needed to really understand what they wanted to stand for in the world, and had slightly lost their way. And so we began by working with an interdisciplinary team, including a lot of the leaders, CEO, FD at the time, on a purpose quest.
Yeah.
Because our belief is that for all of the organization to hum in synchronization, everybody needs to know why we're doing what we're doing. There's that beautiful quote of JFK visiting NASA and saying to the guy sweeping the floor, "Oh, you're doing a great job. What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm putting a man on the moon."
Yeah.
Everybody had one single mission, and that was to put a man on the moon. And that is a purpose that drives through and touches every part of the organization. So effectively, we took the leadership team away. We have a process by which we help uncover the purpose of the organization. There's a moment where literally it drops in out of the ether, and everyone looks at each other and goes, "Okay, this is truly what we stand for." It's a unique expression of the brand.
And they're in different locations, aren't they? You choose the location with the leadership team, or you have done, is that?
Where we hold the purpose quest, yes, is a different location. Typically, we do it in nature, because nature has an inherent wisdom and helps people open up to, the wiser intelligence, I want to say, of nature. But Brompton is a very urban brand. And so the challenge from Will was, do us your purpose quest, but do it in a city, which is like, oh no, I love the tree climbing bit. How are we going to do that? Anyway, we did design an experience that was very profound, and the purpose quest was landed, and then that purpose was launched in the first ever all hands meeting, which is they shut down the factories for the first time in 50 years, so that everybody could be present for the landing of the purpose. And that too has to be done in a way that isn't top down, but actually gets everybody to really feel and understand what the purpose is. And so we help design it reach the hearts and minds of the internal audience, and then began to develop, how does this show up in the world? How does it show up in the culture? How does it, and the bit that I love is running with, well, what does this mean for the future of products and the way we show up in the world? How do we market? How do we, what sort of experiences do we want to create? What sort of partnerships do we need in the world so that we are honoring our purpose and bringing it alive? Fantastic. And so it's an ongoing relationship.
Yeah, because we are now still working with Brompton. It sounds a bit weird. Brilliant. Okay. So I love the fact that you're going to come in and really change how we think about brand as an agency, and how that last piece of the jigsaw for us is elevated. Because I don't want to do us a disservice. We've been working with brands for 5-10 years, and our Lou or Louise is probably one of the best brand communication creators I think I've ever worked with. And you've now worked with Lou now. She's an absolute genius and has a great team as well. Yeah. So that excites me about the future. But where do you see that? How do you interpret that? And where did that conversation evolve for you?
So what I like about the structure and the vision that StrategiQ hold is that the business and the tech are integrated with brand, because doing work in isolation is short term, and it loses energy because it is not multiplying the capacity of a business to thrive in the right way. Yeah. So it feels very important, and that's why I preferred to bring Jam to a company like this that has these other pillars, rather than fold it into an existing creative agency, to deliver pure creative, because I know that a culture is incredibly important within an organization as much as a brand, as is the business strategy, as is the technology. If you don't understand that, you may as well just not start. So what I love is this integrated approach, which can, and it can be measured. This is what you guys are wonderful at, which Jam has struggled for its entire 30 years, is the ROI. It's like people go, well, how can we measure the impact of that wonderful idea? It's like, and I'd be going, well, go and ask them how much they loved it. But that's not an answer. It's not okay anymore. In a world that's so connected with technology, it's like, we need to be able to prove the tangible impacts. And so, your capacity to monitor and evolve the technology of an organization to serve its future and understand its business, and then to bring in the imagination and creativity that we'll foster by working more together, just has endless potential. And I want big, bold brands to come to us and ask us for that support, because, you were saying agencies are facing ever larger challenges from AI and other unexpected turmoil going on in the world, whether it's energy wars, this, that, there's all sorts of, we're in a massive transition as a species, and agencies are having to refine themselves. And I think by bringing the imagination into relationship with the business acumen that you guys provide and the technology know-how is a really strong trilogy of.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many times we have this conversation, when we sort of play this backwards and forwards, it just I don't know, your feeling is that it feels like the right time for us to be here in London, to be working with the brands that we already do, plus bringing you into the brands that we work with as well, versus you bringing us into the brands. It just feels like perfect timing. And just on that point about the challenges and this integrated approach, because that word integrated over the last 5 or 10 years, I think, has maybe been a bit overused, because integrated is generally related to integrated marketing tactics. It's not integrated value. And I think that how does, marketing tactics are really, really important. But actually layering it up to that conversation. I have a conversation with an incredibly large brand, global brand, going through some creative concepts for a new category they were going after a couple of weeks ago. And I'd never asked this question before in all of my years of marketing, which is, have you gone into ChatGPT or another version of ChatGPT and typed in that product offering and see if your brand has a right to play in that space currently? And these were really, really senior people that hadn't done that piece of work after doing 3 weeks' work of creative thinking. And for me now, we've got to really test ourselves in terms of our processes and with understanding, and arguably we've always done that. AI is just a new format of how brands turn up. But it's a really interesting time for us to really level up our thinking approach, bring our experience around all, as you said, measurement we've been brilliant at, tactics we've been brilliant at, and how do you merge that with, and I don't know if this conversation is naturally formed as part of this brand times performance.
I mean, I think as you speak, you're making me recognize that term blue sky thinking, which is actually nonsense. There is no such thing as blue sky thinking, because it implies you're working in a vacuum, and we aren't. We are in a globally integrated, connected system. Every organization has a history and a future, and it's linked to everything else. There's no such. So as you say, it's like knowing the atmosphere and the climate that the brand, the organization is within, enables us to do more important work rather than blue sky thinking, which actually can't exist.
Nice.
But yeah,
lovely. Well, I want to say thank you for trusting us with the 30 years.
Put it there, dude.
Put it there.
30 years.
30 years
oh my God, don't say that. It makes me
of Jam,
anxious.
and I kind of finish where I started, really, which is I'm incredibly excited about the partnership, the future, the addition to the strategic family, and for any of those brands out there that want some of the
magic.
I was going to say wackiness for some reason, but I know it's the magic of brand performance. Then it feels like we're in that leveling up phase of strategic, and incredibly excited. So thank you. Let's do it.
Thank you.